it is a thought process that impacts every single thing you do. And I see this all the time, especially with my female clients, because they come to me and they're like so sure that despite the fact that all of their methods of them trying to lose weight in the past, and I know you were a nutrition coach at some point, so I want to hear your take on this, they're so convinced that they need to keep doing those things like cutting the carbs, reducing their calories, training harder, more cardio, whatever, you insert any kind of fad diet trend. They are like sure that they need to keep doing that, even though objectively speaking, it's not working.
Let's link up with Krysta on the FYX. She's a wellness coach with a focus on mental well-being and physical strength.
What's up, FYX listeners? Welcome back to our latest episode of the FYX podcast. I'm your host, Krysta Huber, and I have a very cool, emphasis on the word cool, guest for today's podcast. Now, I'm being totally corny and it'll make sense in about 25 seconds when I explain who this lovely person is. And that is Stephen Longo, the founder of Orka Bars. Orka Bars are a protein ice cream, and I'm going to give you the full rundown, all the deets on exactly what this product is. But before I do, I want to establish something right out of the gate with the introduction for this show and for this guest. This is an episode that if you have had at any point in your life an experience where you're like, what the F am I doing? What is my purpose? What should I be doing with my career? Where do I go next? Why do I feel stuck? Then you are going to want to listen to this episode 3 times. You are going to want to take notes. And whether you have any aspirations of being an entrepreneur, or a current entrepreneur, or maybe you're just somebody who's like, I'm super happy in my job. I like working in corporate America. I like working for somebody else. There's a lot in here about understanding how to find your place and your purpose. And I don't think it is relevant only to people pursuing a path around innovation and that sort of thing. But I also say that to say that Stephen is an innovator. And this was such a cool podcast episode for me to record, also because he is a local Jersey guy. His brand is local to Jersey. He's literally making these ice cream bars in Asbury, New Jersey. Started in Belmar. And as I've said with some of our past recent local guests that we've had on the show, I really love being able to highlight our Jersey peeps and represent strong, and just am so proud of all the cool things that are happening like right in my backyard. So Stephen, thank you for all that you're doing. Thank you for being a pioneer and really asking lots of interesting questions and pursuing your dreams. And it was so fun to get his firsthand take on what the whole journey's been like, how he's gotten to where he is. And so let me explain what the heck an Orka bar actually is. It is, put simply, the best ice cream you are going to ever have. And if you've been around the show for even a minute, if you follow me on Instagram, you guys know I take my ice cream game probably second to as seriously as I take my coffee. I eat lots of ice cream, in particular in the summer. And so much of that has to do with the fact that Jersey's home to some, especially the Jersey Shore, we're home to some really awesome homemade ice cream shops that have been around for years and years and years. Shout out to places like Hoffman's and Sundays. Those are 2 of my favorite spots. However, Orka Bar is something totally different. It is, yes, you heard me correct, a protein-packed treat. And without stealing Stephen's thunder, he's going to explain where he got the idea for this. A lot of it started with some beach volleyball and just looking for a different option that would be nice and refreshing and cool and something that you wanted to eat after coming off the beach. But what's really unique about Orka Bar, and as a nutrition coach, I am all about this, is the fact that it is an egg-based protein specifically from egg whites. Now, before you poo-poo me, you should also know that I'm an egg white queen. And I joke with my clients all the time that I single-handedly sell out all of the small cartons of egg whites at the Trader Joe's local to my current home. And I'm probably only half kidding, but it's true. I eat egg whites like water. So when Stephen found me on Instagram and he DM'd me from the Orka Bar page and told me that he had created a protein ice cream that was an egg white base, I was like, can I get my hands on that? How fast can I get them? And this guy, with the amazing customer service that he has, I got it within 24 hours. And I was so excited. I ate 2 of them within 20 minutes of each other. And I'm not embarrassed to admit that. I will also share that all of my clients, all of my friends who have since hit up Stephen to get their hands on Orka bars, every single one of them is a repeat customer. I won't sell anybody out by name, but I have a friend that gets visits from Stephen on more than one day of the week. He knows who he is. And we love Orka bar for good reason. It's so cool when you hear people, and this is me alluding a little bit to Stephen's story, but having had some digestion issues himself, dairy not always agreeing with him at certain points, he'd be like, well, I want ice cream, so I'm just going to say F it. And then kind of paying for those consequences later, he saw an opening and he saw that there was a need for a solution to come up with something that was going to be better for him and really serve that craving, serve that fix for that refreshing cold treat after coming off of the beach, after playing beach volleyball. And, you know, it fits into our macros really well. These bars have 15 grams of protein. And I don't really know. Like I said, I'm an ice cream connoisseur, you guys. I don't know if there's anything else on the market that can really match this. So I'm telling you right now, we are on the verge of seeing some very cool things happening for Orka because it is so different. It's so unique. Stephen is on a mission to refresh the cold category with this healthier ice cream alternative, and I couldn't be happier to support it. So before I keep going on and not let you into the show, I am going to let you into the show. This one is one you're going to enjoy. Full disclosure, this is probably going to be the episode that makes Stephen so busy. He will be making bars in Asbury the entire weekend after it drops. So we are excited. And for those of you who are not in Jersey and may not be local, have no fear. Stephen is in the works of getting all of the logistics up and running for delivery outside of Jersey. So my New York friends, maybe some Philly friends, expanding that delivery radius, working on some things with his packaging and all that sort of stuff. He'll mention it in the episode too, but stay tuned because you will be able to get your hands on these even if you're not local to Monmouth or Ocean County. If you are local, you can go right to his website though. It's all linked down in the show notes for you guys. Highly, highly recommend getting the variety pack so you can try all of the flavors. If I had to rank them, my top one would probably be a tie for the cookies and cream and the raspberry. And at the time of this recording, he was working on a chocolate one. So at the time that this airs, I'm sure I will have tried it at that point, and I think I could put it in my top because I love all things chocolate. But anyways, let's welcome Stephen, give him a very warm welcome to the FYX podcast. And this definitely won't be the last you will be hearing about Orka bars. Enjoy this one. Stephen, welcome to the FYX podcast. I'm so excited for this conversation. We were chatting before we officially hit the record button and the timer was going. And we were both like, we got to get rolling because we have plenty to say. So I'm really looking forward to the FYX listeners getting to know more about you, getting to understand what it is that you do in a lot of different facets of your life. So thank you first and foremost for being here. And to kick things off, before we get into all things ice cream, nutrition, owning a business, all the stuff that we're going to talk about, tell me what your go-to coffee order is. What are you sipping on for a guy that's as busy as you? I would assume you like your caffeine.
So I'm going to be honest with you.
Not a coffee guy?
I'm not a coffee person.
I'm shocked.
Yeah.
Okay, that's all right. We won't cut the interview. But what do you like to drink instead? What do we have?
I will still give you my go-to like caffeine option.
Perfect.
But I will say that like first thing I need when I wake up is just some breakfast and a
Nice.
glass of water.
Okay. I'm so surprised. You seem like you'd be a coffee guy.
I know,
Okay.
but I have been getting really turned on to what is it, like vanilla chai tea latte?
Okay. All right.
For some reason, that's pretty good. Espressos, I love
Okay.
a good espresso,
All right,
like at the end
nice.
of a meal or if
Yeah.
you're going out or something
Okay.
like that.
More of like an
That gets me
after
going.
dinner sort of situation.
Yeah, which
But
is
you're not-
odd
Yeah.
because like they're kind of opposite, right? Like the
Right.
chai tea latte is going to be super sweet and like a little more milkier and
Yeah.
frothy, and like the espresso
It's
is
straight
black.
shot. Like, let's hit it.
That's it. Let's go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. Cool. All right. Have you never been a coffee person or did you like eliminate it from your life?
You know, it's odd because my mother is like a huge coffee drinker and her side of the family has always been
Okay.
really big coffee people.
Yeah.
But my dad's side was never, I mean, well, he didn't take up a big coffee drinking
Okay.
lifestyle.
It wasn't like a
It was
part
more
of his
tea.
routine.
Exactly. It was
Sure.
more tea style and things like
Huh.
that. And I think I just, if I ever went for something, it kind of landed more in that space.
Okay.
Like teas, ginger teas, and he would always like actually get the fresh root and like
Oh,
cut
cool.
up the root and
Okay,
like make
awesome.
the tea like that.
So he made it like the whole experience.
Exactly. There was like more to it.
Okay,
Yeah.
makes sense. Well, cool. Nice. No judgment. It's allowed. I always get the occasional guest like every couple of episodes who isn't a coffee drinker. And, you know, caffeine is one of the most studied areas of nutrition in general, just like understanding the benefits, potential negative side effects. I think it's having a moment of people are concerned about stress, adrenal fatigue, all that sort of stuff, that a lot of people are cutting back on their caffeine consumption. So it makes sense. But anyways, I'm a coffee lover and I could talk about coffee for a whole episode, but we're not here to talk about coffee. We are here to talk about ice cream for sure, which I happen to really love too. So this is perfect. But we are obviously going to talk all things Orka Bars. But before we get into that, I want to know more about you personally. Your story of how you got to where you are right now is just fascinating. And we could probably do like 3 podcast episodes and talk about your other business venture too. But tell the listener, as we invite them into this conversation, there are lots of people out there who own businesses, who try different things, who go the startup route. But when it comes to you personally and who you are, why should the listener care about what you have to say in the rest of this episode?
Yeah, well, that's a good question. I think what's always kind of separated me mentally has always been not really feeling comfortable like where I've been just in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And I've gone through a bunch of different avenues in terms of, you know, finance and accounting, acting and doing like that side of things. And nothing was really, really resonating with me. And I felt like there was something else that I was like searching for. And I knew for the longest time that like entrepreneurship was something that I was passionate about and I wanted to go after because there was something about the journey that really spoke to me. And I've always been somebody that's looked for something deeper, mentally, physically. And there was something about what it requires of the individual to like go out and really wholeheartedly pursue creating something from nothing. And that always inspired me. It always captivated me. I had friends when I was at university in Manhattan that went off and did those kind of things because
like even in college,
you know, New York City is such a you know, a place that like cultivates that kind of
risk-taking
mindset and risk-taking. Exactly. And seeing them constantly doing it when I was taking a more conservative route at the time was always like, what am I doing? Like, that's not who I am. And it felt like doing this, going after this type of goal is just resonates with it. It's just who I am. And it's like trying to like fulfill something within yourself. It's like really
for sure.
what brings it out.
Yeah, I appreciate what you have to say and your take on it, because entrepreneurship, people who don't do it maybe can't relate to this, but it's like the ultimate form of therapy, in my opinion. It's a really weird form of therapy. It's like trial by fire. But the reason why I look at it that way is because it makes you leave your ego at the door when things don't go well or you fail and you are the only person you can blame.
Oh, totally.
Like that piece of it, I find very liberating. I was never scared of that. I actually, maybe my control freak side coming out and making this statement, but I actually liked that. Like,
thriving.
Yeah, it's like because I was in situations taking the more traditional route like you, which I do want to move into next here because I have a question around like, why you went that route first if you knew this was your calling. So we're going to go there. But it's really interesting when I think about all the jobs that I had before I pursued my business full time. The constant theme for me of like why I knew this wasn't it is because I felt like really stuck by my manager, boss, whoever. They wanted to do something a certain way and I never felt like anyone would allow me. There was always something pushing me down. You're too young. You don't understand this. You're not thinking about that. And I realized I actually had a boss, my like second corporate job that I had within a year after graduating college, still in the finance world like you. My boss at the time, I was leaving that job to pursue a full-time fitness position. And that was like my first leap into moving in the direction that I am today. And he actually said to me, and I'll never forget this conversation. He was like, I'm happy for you that you're exploring this and doing this. But he's like, I promise you. And I should reach back out to him because we never really stayed in touch. But he was like, you are never going to work for somebody else. He was like, this is just a stepping stone. And this might be like exciting for you right now at the age that you're at, but this is not your end destination. Yep. And he was like, he said to me straight up, he was like, you'll never be happy until you work for yourself.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't know. And I just didn't know at 23. And now that I've had the experiences that I've had, I'm like, that guy was so right. So anyways, I really appreciate that. And I love that take, but I want to know if you had this knowing inside of you as young of an age as you're describing, what drew you to still take that safer corporate route initially? Because I think that'll be a good place for us to kind of set this up, to walk through how you got from having your finance and accounting positions being in consulting to then eventually getting into the startup space, developing products, and now making the next leap into developing food specifically.
Yeah, really great question. I think when you're at a young age, meaning high school, right? Mm-hmm. And that's kind of where you start to explore opportunities, and people try to say, or ask you the question of like, what do you want to be? Right? To what end? Like, what do you want to do? That's when you start to really develop that conversation.
Yeah.
Your biggest mentors at the time, for me at least, are your mother and father, right?
Yeah,
your parents.
Totally.
And it's not really until you get to that age and then go off on your own that you actually start to enculturate out of your like tribe, right? Which is your mother, father, siblings, aunts, whoever it might be. Mm-hmm. And at that time, my parents were both teachers, so they had very conservative, stable positions. Yeah. And that was just the kind of mindset that they
generationally,
pumped.
I think is big too.
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely right. My mother and father are both boomers. So like they're, older, and they like the idea of a paycheck, knowing what's coming next, benefits, all that kind of thing, right? But it was never for me, and I knew it was never for me, I think, at a young age, but I still just did it, right? Because I was always taught safe, go safe. So when I went to university, I went with the intention of majoring in accounting. I had taken a couple of electives at my senior year in high school, and I was like, I'm good at this. Like math was something that came easier to me.
Okay.
So it was like the easy way out almost in a way. I was like, I'm good at this. I didn't really have to study too hard for it. Yeah, it made it safe. Yeah. Exactly. And I was like, let me do that, because deep down, I think I was still struggling with like, I don't actually want to do it, but if it's something that comes easy to me, let me do it so I'm not putting all of myself into it in a way. So I went that direction. And when I got to school, I was attending Pace University in Manhattan at the time. I had a good friend of mine that I went to high school with, who was 2 years ahead of me, who has just left an internship, and they were looking for somebody to bring on. So I was really fortunate my freshman year of school to get immersed into an internship.
Oh, wow.
And start to kind of build my resume down a certain path. And it wasn't exactly accounting, it was more finance. So I was working for Morgan Stanley, Smith Barney, doing like wealth management and planning and portfolio management. Yeah. And it was cool. It was fine. It was a learning experience. But, when I was at school, I was still studying for my master's in accounting. But along the way, what I realized is that I would still be trying to leave that world any chance I got in order to experience something more creative.
Okay.
And so I was really heavily involved in kind of like acting and going on auditions and things like that. And I was taking, side electives if my curriculum could had space for it, as like, taking acting classes and marketing classes and things like that weren't part of my core studies. Yeah. But I was doing it because it felt like an escape. And I think for so long I was like, just like burying the fact that like I didn't really want to be doing this. And I was getting invigorated by all these other things that I was doing on the side that kind of made the accounting studying, the finance studying, and like that track a little more digestible. Yeah. You know what I mean? And
you're getting your lick somewhere else. So
exactly. Yeah. And then I just had a bunch of friends who started going off on entrepreneurial journeys in college, and that really excited me. And I tried to tap into them and understand kind of the world that they were in. And it started off just going to like networking events or having conversations with them in like a broader way, until I really started thinking that it could be the path for me. Yeah.
That's awesome. I love that. And I appreciate your honesty too, because I don't think that I think a lot of people may relate to what you said and like feeling that struggle, but they don't necessarily analyze it. And I don't think it's that they're not trying to. I think that either maybe they're not, maybe they're like so busy they're not creating the space to think about those decisions. But I think it's more a lot of like denying the truth and just saying like, I should go this path just because. So I certainly did that for sure. And like I took winding paths like kind of quickly right out of school because I went to school for journalism and I wanted to be a reporter, but I wanted to be on TV and I didn't want to live in like some random ass city in the middle of nowhere. And I knew that that was required, but I did that for college. I was like, I can't do this for 4 more years. Yeah. So someone advised me, go into finance, develop a niche. I wanted to be in business journalism. And then they were like, eventually you'll get back on camera. Like you'll be interviewed as like an expert for different financial topics. I was like, okay, cool. That makes sense. But the minute I got to sitting behind a desk, I was like, nope, I can't do it. And when I think back on it now, I always knew I wasn't going to sit behind a desk. That was the thing that actually attracted me to journalism, because you're not really, if you're interviewing somebody, there's way more to it than sitting on your computer. Like, yes, you're researching, writing articles, but there was always something about interviewing someone that like, I'm very extroverted and it just like really lit me up. So I always kind of had that like feeling, but like you, same outside influences and stuff, I still kind of thought I should play that safe route. So totally resonates for sure. And it's something I've talked about on this podcast quite a bit. And I have to draw the nutrition parallel and the fitness parallel to that. It is a thought process that impacts every single thing you do. And I see this all the time, especially with my female clients, because they come to me and they're like so sure that despite the fact that all of their methods of them trying to lose weight in the past, and I know you were a nutrition coach at some point, so I want to hear your take on this, they're so convinced that they need to keep doing those things, like cutting the carbs, reducing their calories, training harder, more cardio, whatever, you insert any kind of fad diet trend. Right. They are like sure that they need to keep doing that, even though objectively speaking, it's not working. Like if it was working, they wouldn't be coming to me frustrated, upset, lacking confidence, you name it, any pain point. Yet they're like, nope, this has to be the way that I do it.
Yep.
So I think it's a mindset that just, trickles into everything else that we do. And with that in mind, kind of talk me through like, when did you, I know you had like a more traditional corporate job and technically still do, but at what point was like your first like step into trying to create something on your own?
Yeah. When I got to Ernst & Young, that's where I wound up getting my first job after school, which was a really awesome opportunity. It was a Big Four at the time, still is. And when I was there, I originally went into like a forensic accounting role, which on paper sounded like really, really cool. But like, and like in theory was awesome. But like once you started getting into doing it, it was like, holy shit, what did I like get myself into? It's like, I was doing like 60, 70 hour weeks, and some of the roles that I was on, I still remember this one job. I was working in the basement of a New York City brownstone, because there was like a company that worked out of that space, and their computers that we needed to be on were in the basement. No windows, no natural light. And I'm in there from like
12 hours a day.
Oh my God. You would go in the morning and like leave at night and have no recollection of time.
Yeah, right.
And I'm next to like a hot water heater, like clanking and everything like that. And it's like in this seat, I'm just like, what am I doing with myself? What am I doing with my life right now? And I remember at that time too, a buddy of mine that I grew up with, who was also living in the city, working in Manhattan, had his job around the corner. And we would go out for lunch as like our escape. And we would meet up and we would go and have a sandwich, whatever it was. And he would just be telling me like how stressed out he was at his job and like how much he just wasn't in it. And we would just be venting to one another about like, what are we doing with our lives? All this kind of stuff. And then we would turn around and go back and sit in that seat and keep doing it. At one point though, I had like a meltdown. Like I couldn't do it anymore. I was getting overworked. I was also at an unfortunate place in a relationship that I was in at the time, and it sent me down this mental spiral. And I was like, I need to take some time. I need to go on a hiatus. What kind of opportunities can I take here? And I was really fortunate, I think, because at Ernst & Young, they were really understanding of that kind of thing. And they let me go off and take time, and with the intention of coming back. And my job would be there for me, which was really awesome. I mean, how many jobs?
No, I have a lot of
people.
Having lived in Charlotte, I think I shared this with you when we first met. I had a lot of friends that worked there, and between like there, Deloitte, all those places, they had really good benefits. Like, for as much as the day-to-day job experience sometimes was a little wild, everyone I knew that worked there, they kind of justified the decision to work there when they looked at those other things on paper, so long as you took advantage of them too, right? So that's really awesome that you were able to do that.
Yes.
But it sounds like you didn't go back.
I did go back. Okay. So I went and packed a suitcase literally the next day after handling things with HR, and I moved to Myrtle Beach, South Carolina.
Why there?
My friend that I went to university with owned a tiki bar and restaurant on the water.
Nice.
And a little escape. I was like, what can I do that is so far from what I'm doing now in terms of like where I would be spending my time?
Sure.
I was like, hit him up. His name was Gil. And he was like, come on down. He wanted me to come so bad. You know, I'd visited in the past, and he was like, awesome. I have a spare bedroom. You can stay in it. So I would go, I would sleep in that spare bedroom, and literally Monday to Wednesday, I was like spending my time just with myself, you know, using that time to better understand what it is I wanted to do. Right. And what did I want to move into at that point? And then Thursday through Sunday, I was slinging drinks at his bar, you know, picking up some money on the side to try and just make some pocket change. And I would find that Monday and Wednesday, I'd be going on my laptop, still connecting with people, you know, from EY, because I was still, you know, involved, but I just wasn't working on anything. And I was looking internally for other opportunities. And it was because I felt so fortunate to be working for an organization that actually did care about me in that
made
way.
You like the culture.
Exactly. Sure. And I love the culture. And so I didn't want to necessarily say goodbye. I wanted to see what else was out there that I could maybe do that helped me start to feel that visceral experience that I was looking for. And there was an internal kind of team that was just starting up. They were called themselves the purpose realized team, basically. And the intention of what the work that they were going to be doing was helping individuals and employees of organizations feel less like a number and feel more like they are being fulfilled in the work that they do, satisfied and contributing to the stuff.
So this was for both EY's internal atmosphere, but also maybe in a consulting type position, they would do this with other companies too.
Absolutely. Okay. So I was moving into more of a consulting role. And the thing also that I really loved about this is that it was a new group of people coming together to form this. And it felt entrepreneurial.
Yeah, totally.
These people, we were going to be coming together to build out a new methodology that we were offering.
It didn't exist, right?
It didn't exist yet.
Scratch.
And it was like, cool, we were going to do this. So
That's awesome.
You know, had to prove that I could do it, you know, and it took some time doing that. But I wound up eventually leaving Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, and the Tiki Bar, which I miss dearly still to this day. If you're ever in Myrtle Beach, go to the Tiki Bar on 8th Avenue.
It's called the Tiki Bar.
It's called the Tiki Bar.
Nice.
Yeah. And I went back to EY with the intention and eventuality of joining this team. And we were kind of this band of misfits that was from all different walks of life over around the organization in New York. And what was one thing that I think we all had in common is that we were all looking for fulfilling our own sense of purpose.
Yeah, for sure.
And what was that? What did it look like? And this was kind of an opportunity to not only start to do that for ourselves, but potentially start to have that impact at other organizations. And that sounded really cool. And really awesome. So it was during that experience for, I want to say around 4 years or something like that, that it started to have me really study up on fulfilling one's purpose and build a real sense of confidence in myself, because the knowledge that I was gaining in that role wasn't very narrow. It wasn't accounting. It wasn't numbers. It was more strategy. It was more communications. It was
Right.
more interpersonal relations.
And a lot of
business
times
development.
those jobs are hard to get when you're like younger at a
Totally.
company.
Yes.
Like when you said
Absolutely.
you had to prove it, I'm listening to hearing you say that, and I think about different roles like that I had tried to go for. Or even in marketing, like at some financial institutions, they always want somebody who's been there for 10 years. And it's like, well, like maybe I have some ideas with the perspective that I have at 20 something that I could bring to the table, but nobody ever wants to give you that chance.
Mhm.
And that was actually the reason that I ultimately got really frustrated with a lot of those corporate jobs that I left.
Yeah.
So I think that's awesome that you were able to like find that way in. And I'm very impressed that you also stayed with it for 4 years. So like clearly there was like healing work and maybe even some like self-exploration and self-development that you got through that it sounds like kind of helped you start to figure out, what does this look like for me?
Absolutely. And it was right around that time too that I started to dive a little bit deeper into health and wellness.
Okay.
And I think when you're on this path of better understanding self-fulfillment, self-realization, purpose, it's just so congruent with the health and wellness space, right? All of these people are trying to do that
Absolutely.
same thing, right, for themselves. And so I was always somebody that was into nutrition, health from a very young age. My father, friends, things like that. And it just kind of came naturally to me as something of enjoyment.
Yeah. And importance.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it was then at that time that I started really diving in deeper. And it was probably, I was always somebody that brought food with me to work in order to live into that healthy lifestyle that I was working for. And so I'd be bringing, 2 to 3 meals a day to, reach certain goals that I had for myself. And bringing that amount of Tupperware is a lot, right? And then if you're going to go after the office to the bar.
All my clients are smiling about this because they know, and that's what's required. Like the low hanging fruit is stop spending the $15 that you do on some sandwich that you don't understand how the macros work and you're not getting enough protein. And when really like you could just control one more variable that takes you maybe 10 minutes by prepping the food the night before in the morning. So keep going because I'm excited about the Tupperware thing.
So I am bringing all these different, traditional Tupperware containers to the office, whether it's plastic bags, plastic containers, glass Pyrex, whatever it is. And I'm like saying to myself, God, either the Pyrex is too heavy, the plastic's, fallible and it's leaking and all that kind of stuff. And when you put it into the dishwasher, it's like shrinking and all that kind of thing. And eventually I was like, there's got to be something better. So I did. I found something that was a silicone compartmented container that collapsed. And I love the fact that it had sections and I could bring it and transport it easily. And living in a small New York City apartment, it was great to have something that fit into kitchen cabinet or drawer. But what was still faulty about it was whatever you put into the compartments and you place the lid on top, there was still enough space and air room that liquids or whatever it was would transition into the other compartments. And I was like, I'd be bringing like salmon over some salad and then like
and you
blueberries
wanted that to be separated.
Yeah, and my blueberries would wind up tasting like fish when I like brought the fish in. It was disgusting.
Right,
but
you wanted the single container because you wanted to carry fewer things and you needed more meals.
Right, I like that idea.
Sense. Yeah.
But the second I saw the challenges that I was facing, I set out and said to myself, first, does anything else exist that might help me overcome this issue and challenge that I'm having? And do other people have this same problem?
Great entrepreneurial questions.
And so the first thing I started doing was I used the kitchenettes of Ernst & Young to start handing out, and it really started as a conversation. When I would be heating up my food, I'd see other people doing the same thing. And I'm like, okay, these people are like me.
Yeah.
Hey, what are some of the problems? Like, do you like that container? What containers do you like? It's like a really absurd thing to be like starting banter with about with somebody, but they would like be open to it because they were actually having the same struggles.
And you were doing it every day.
You're doing it every day.
So it's actually like a hot topic that people could get pretty passionate about.
Yeah, exactly. So what I started doing was just surveying the community. And I was like, first I was doing it at work. And then eventually when I was tapping into everybody at work, I was going home from the office. And the second I had spare time, I was literally on Instagram DMing people in health and wellness that I would think would be meal prepping.
Right.
And being like, hey, do you struggle with XYZ? And like you heard back from maybe like 10%. But when you send like 1,000 DMs to the point where
Still
Instagram's stopping you from sending
yeah.
messages to people.
Because you're sending the same one over and over. They think you're a bot.
You wind up building enough feedback. And that was my intention with it. It was like,
that's so cool.
Okay, I didn't find anything in the marketplace.
Right.
That was meeting the design and expectations of what I wanted to do. And now I was starting to actually build some data around proving
that other
concept.
people felt the same way. Yeah, there was a need.
And that was the moment where I will never forget it, and neither will my friend probably, running to Barnes & Noble to buy an inventor's notebook with like plastic wrap on it. And like I ran home and like I took out a pencil and I started sketching a container that I would like then bring to my buddy that lived up the street from my apartment at the time and have him sign off. So there would be some sort of like proprietary protection around like the idea. Cause I was like so nervous because I was like, nobody's doing this. It's not out there.
Right.
Like, how do I be the first one to do this? And I was like, I know I have to protect.
Yeah.
You know, probably that had like very little
implication.
But
whatever.
Exactly,
It made you
whatever.
feel better. That's funny.
So it was from that moment on that I just started drawing it out, prototyping the idea. I had a friend of mine that was a professor at the College of New Jersey, and he was in the engineering field.
Cool.
And he had a bright young student that was interested in getting better at exploring prototyping and three-dimensional design. So I worked with him and paid him like a small little thing to like help me do this. And eventually I came out with a proof model just by working with him. And that's when I knew it was real. And the fact that I had all this data made me then realize it was real. And that's when I decided to go back to Ernst & Young, talk to people about kind of where I was headed, what I was thinking, talk to my family about what I was thinking of doing, and decided to give my 2 weeks notice and say, you know what, I am going to go off and try and do this and figure out how to bring this product to life. Yeah.
So I'm going to fast forward us a little bit here because I know what kind of happened in between. But at that point, I know you went to like a Y2 Combinator kind of route, right?
Yep.
Did you literally just quit your job and then hope that would happen? Like at what point were you saying to yourself, okay, I need some more support if I'm really going to make this a thing? And then after that, obviously, I know there's some COVID issues, manufacturing, all that sort of stuff. Right, so kind of take us right into the transition into what eventually would be your next business with the Orka Bars.
Sure. So just like you mentioned, got into an accelerator program that was even more like confidence building. Like other people believe and they're willing to invest in me to do this.
Yeah.
So that was like a accelerated program that helped me really get things off the road. And as I mentioned, COVID unfortunately shut down, as people know, logistics and manufacturing for a period of time that destroyed my ability to get to market.
Yeah.
When I left my job, I didn't have a car because I was living in Manhattan for so long.
Made sense.
And I moved back into our summer home down by the Jersey Shore, which was an easy transition because it was someplace I always came to regardless of summer, winter, fall in Manhattan. I loved getting away on the weekends, and so many of my friends that I grew up with lived down there already. Right. So it was an easy transition that way. What wasn't easy was deciding, okay, what am I going to do for just some pocket change?
Sure.
And at the time, again, didn't have a car. So there was a local gym across the street that I could walk to. And I'll never forget walking in, dressed nicely and with my resume and sitting down and seeing that they had a part-time desk attendant role. And I was like, what's going to be something that will be flexible?
Sure.
That will give me still the opportunity to
go
pursue
do these other things.
Things.
Yeah, totally. That had to be a key factor.
Oh, yeah. And I sit down and they're like, I'm like, talking to younger guys than myself.
Right.
And they're like, you're really overqualified for this position. And I'm like, that's fine. I think you'll see that like I have a real interest in doing this kind of thing. And maybe I can even help you guys operationally here.
Sure.
Things like that. And they're like, yeah, we're going to hire you. And I was like, awesome, great. I was just so happy to have something.
Yeah, that was like going to be a consistent
I could spend my time,
for sure.
Give
you a routine, not even the money.
Exactly.
Yeah,
start to build that out.
Yeah.
So I'm working there for a while. And I was also heavily involved in volleyball. So I'm a big beach volleyball athlete, doubles beach competitively on the weekends during the season and stuff like that. And for the longest time, now that, I was really working at a gym and I had this just direct access, even though I did in the city as well, I was starting to get closer to this real outdoor lifestyle, living by the beach, working in a gym.
I could see that. Yeah.
And my health and nutrition and wellness path was taking a different level. And for the longest time, actually, as well, I've always struggled with digesting large amounts of dairy and sugar. And so when I was at the gym, I was really interested in starting to pursue this health and wellness path a little bit more, right? From the containers, but now even heavily from like a research standpoint.
Okay.
So I went off and I got my nutrition's coach certification. And in that research, I began to sink myself into everything around gut health and understanding digestion and maybe better understanding the problems I was having.
Yeah, for you. Yeah.
So it wasn't until I started diving more deeply into something called FODMAP. And if you're familiar with FODMAP, it's something a lot of people with IBS and digestive issues will follow in order to be conscious of the things that they can consume that won't give them problems.
Yeah. And then try to add foods back in once you figure out like what we need to kill off in the gut, and then cycle through that good bacteria, all that. It's not fun.
No, it's not.
It's helpful.
All the science is around these, short and long chain carbohydrates that affect the body's ability to break them down. Now, when I was getting into that research and understanding it, I was starting to also tweak what I was consuming. And I had for a while now laid off of, the big, the heavy like whey concentrates and things like that. And I was leaning into more of like the plant-based protein shakes. Pea
proteins.
Exactly. All of that kind of thing, as well as just everything else that I was eating.
Yeah.
And it was August of 2022. And I'm on the beach finishing up some games with some friends of mine. And I come back to the house and I'm looking to grab a quick shake or something to just like replenish, the nutrients and things that I just lost. And I was like, I really want something more refreshing. Like I just got in from a hot day and I was like, this isn't doing it for me, And so I couldn't also digest traditional protein bars. That wasn't working for me. And so I was like, I wonder if I could make a cold product that would be just as nutritious, just as refreshing, and be something that wouldn't bother my stomach. And so I set out on this path of trying to create something. And for the longest time as a kid, my go-to kind of, a cold snack was always a Klondike bar. I loved a Klondike bar. But over the years, as my kind of taste buds changed, as people's do, right? Over like 7 or 8 years, whatever it might be, mine started to lean away from them and just thought the products weren't having the same taste that they did. And I was like, you know what? I love the idea of it being a novelty product that people can still have in their hand and consume as something quick, And so I started exploring ice cream sandwiches originally. And I couldn't figure it out, man.
That's so surprising because
I couldn't figure it out.
And I know we could probably do like a whole episode around like how you actually constructed and like the recipes and stuff and how you formulated it. But it's so surprising because like as just like a consumer who knows nothing about what goes into making these things, when you look at the construction of like a Klondike bar, I would almost think it would be harder to make because like I know you got to dip it in the chocolate and then the ice cream has to be the right temp. Like it seems more complex than I would assume that a bar like like any of those types of like classic like cake on the outside and vanilla in the middle situation.
You're 100% correct. I didn't know what I was setting out to try and do until understanding that like creating a novelty ice cream product is the hardest way to go if you want to try and do something like this, because for instance, like a pint of ice cream, put it through a machine, it pumps it in, right? Yeah. Now you're adding the complexity of design to it, the shape, and stabilization of the shape and everything.
Okay.
So it failed for a long time. And eventually I was able to go a different direction and say, ice cream sandwiches aren't really working. What can I do from like a chocolate coating standpoint as well?
Okay.
And that's what really helped transition the idea and the product
To more of that type of
Gotcha. Thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And I wound up after a year coming out with something that just was stable. Like literally that just would
that
come
you could
out,
actually like it
consume.
had a shape.
Yeah, I wasn't going to melt down, all of
Yeah.
this kind of stuff. And I started just giving it out to some friends and family, having them kind of taste test, i.e. my mother actually being one of the like go-to people.
Yeah.
And, you know, she would be enjoying one on the couch and stuff like that. And she'd be like, you know, these are really good. Like, these are really good.
Yeah.
Like, this might be the thing.
Yeah.
And I'm like, Mom, stop. You know, like your mom, right?
Yeah.
Right? Like pumping
She's
you.
supposed to
Yeah.
say that.
Yeah, exactly.
But they are, for the record, everyone needs to know, they are really good. And as we were talking offline, I think we're going to have to be like very thoughtful about when we put this podcast episode out.
Right.
So that you don't get like blasted with a million orders, because after you guys do your research, I promise you, you're going to be DMing me and be like, where can I get one of these?
Yeah.
And they're that good. So
Yeah.
I have no obligation to say that. So I will give the not mom perspective and back her up.
I appreciate that. I
Yeah.
appreciate that. She's going to love that support too. So it wasn't until I started coming out with some different flavors, right? So originally it was just vanilla.
Okay.
And it was like, let me get vanilla down.
Sure.
People
It's a
love
classic.
vanilla.
Yeah,
Classic, right? To start. Then I started experimenting with some other flavors, raspberry, mint, cookies, and cream, which have now become the 4 foundational flavors that are
And the
available
raspberry
now.
one, I know that's one of your faves.
It's my favorite.
It actually was up there for me too. I really thought it would be the cookies and cream, but I tried the raspberry after the cookies and cream, and you had said to me, like, definitely try that one next. And I was like, this is really good.
Yeah, and they offer different textures and airiness to the consumer depending on what they're more into.
Right.
So it wasn't until a final friend that I had them try the bars. Now all 4 flavors are complete. And so everyone's trying a mixture of these things. And they're just like, yo, you have got to get other people to try these. Like, these are really good. And I was like, all right, I'll give it a go. And I saw every day, right, working the front desk at the gym, different vendors come in and set up tables and market.
So you were like, maybe I should try that.
I hit up
Good
our
place to
marketing
start.
team.
Sure.
And I was like, hey, can I come in with like a table and give out free samples of the product? So, you know, for a week, 2 weeks, I think it was, I was in the kitchen just making these samples.
Yeah, so that you had enough.
So I had enough. And I did all 4 flavors, vanilla, raspberry, mint, cookies, and cream. And my buddy, who was the one that was like, you got to get these out there, also joined me on that day.
Okay.
Like, had
And
some
he
time
helped
to
you.
take from
Yeah.
work.
Mhm.
And he just helped me generate the
Your hype man.
conversation.
Yeah.
And people are leaving the gym. It was a morning session, and everyone's stopping and trying them. And eventually, after like the 9th, 10th, 12th person, they're coming back in and they're like, hey, these are really good. Like, where can I get these? And I'm like, oh, they're not available yet. Like, I'm just giving out free samples to get people's thoughts on it, right?
Yeah.
My intention was
You were still doing your market research.
Exactly.
Yeah,
I would be filling out like a little survey.
Okay. You
thing.
were okay. You were like literally asking.
Data collecting.
Yeah.
And eventually my friend like pulls me aside and just like, dude, what the hell are you doing? He's like, sell the damn things. He's like, that's what we're here for, isn't it? And I'm like, yeah, you're right. I'm an idiot. Like, what am I doing? So the next person that turned around and came in.
So we know you're going to need like a CMO
yeah,
at some point,
exactly.
because it's not going to be Stephen.
That's not going to be my thing. I'm like then taking names. And all of a sudden I found myself taking
orders.
literally 30 names.
Oh
and
my
I
gosh.
sold over 100 bars.
So
and
were
I got
you like,
rid of
shit,
every
what am I
single
going to do?
sample. Like, I remember still this picture of opening the freezer, taking it, and like every bag
Was
that I brought
gone.
in of the
That's awesome.
So that night I went home and I was I was just making bars, making product. And I was like, wow, I think I really might have something here. And for the next several weeks, I was still at the gym and people were coming up to the front desk asking for more orders. And so
Like
it was
running the ice cream shop at the front desk. That's great.
Yeah, literally.
That's great.
And it wasn't until that really started clicking and the confidence started building within myself. And I was like, all right, let me try another pop-up. And since then, I've been on this journey of still getting it out there, all these pop-ups, and yeah, and that's just kind of where it started, and that was in July of this year that I
That's
decided
amazing.
to finally do that.
And that was such a kind of understanding where you came from to where you are now and how it all sort of happened. That was described that journey in such a great way. So thank you for giving us all of that insight and everything. And we are going to be coming up on the end of our time here in a couple minutes, but I think that's a perfect segue into just kind of asking you the question. It's a big question, but now that you've continued to build more confidence, you're past some market research to a degree. I know you've had some bumps along the way. You've mentioned a little bit, just alluding to some of the issues with creating a stable product. I know you've realized environment has been big for you. You had hiccups at certain points where you were like, I got this down, but now today it's not working.
Yeah.
You realize that the temperature and the air pressure and all that sort of stuff was a factor.
Yeah.
But where are you going next? What's the 2.0 version of this? Because it is still so new. We were talking offline, you're in the trenches right now and you're in the grind of it. And I think that's the most exciting place to be because there's just so much possibility on the other side. So what are you thinking about right now? What's maybe keeping you up at night? I love that question for somebody who's at this stage. What's on your mind the most of what you want to do next?
Totally. So the demand for the product has been through the roof, as you know, and it's required me, and I had to move into a commercial kitchen space. So that's really given me the opportunity to expand freezer space and work in an environment that's a little more controlled. Sure. And now I am pumping out product great every time. And that consistency is solid. And so that has given me a lot of healthy sleeping nights, knowing that the product is in that way now.
That you're not needing to tweak it every day.
Right.
Yeah.
But the emails are now coming in and the demand is coming in outside of my current delivery zone. Mm-hmm. As you know, I'm a one-man band. Yeah. And
I had multiple friends tell me, literally 2 clients and a good friend of mine who I know, told you that he wanted his bars real quick. Yeah. And I told him, I was you need to give him a day. And he texted me, my friend Joe, he won't care if I shout him out. We were on the phone and I sent him the link and he's I just ordered them. When am I going to get them? I'm chill out. Yeah. He was well, what if I send him a message and say that you're my friend? I'm I can't pull any strings for you like that. This is literally one guy. And then he gets the bars whatever the day later and texts me immediately and he just goes, your friend Stephen is gonna need to hire a few more people just specifically to come to my house. That's how excited he was about it. And one other thing I want to touch on before we wrap up too that's really important for all my listeners out there who are wondering about more of the nutrition side of things. Guys, the macros on these bars are insane. They're super low carb. When you think about different options out there in terms of ice cream, that's always a limiting factor for people. They're not high in fat either, and they have protein. So when it comes to that dessert treat, if you can get a bar that what your average is somewhere between 11 and 15 grams of protein, right? Depending on the flavor.
15 grams of protein per bar. Yeah.
So with that in mind, there's nothing else out there that even does that. I won't drop any of the things that I'd compare it to, but the one thing that I'd compare it to the most, it doesn't have 15 grams of protein. So yeah, I think that's fantastic. And it's like a bar on a stick. It's not like yours where it has the chocolate coating on the outside. Mm-hmm. And to me, that's something that really sets it apart. So wanted to make sure I actually outlined why I'm so excited about this ice cream specifically, because there is more to it than that. Yeah. But anyways, just again, to kind of bring this to where you're going next, you got consistency with the product, more of the orders are coming in, you're poised to be able to start to scale this thing. So I would imagine people is going to be the next step. But what other things are you thinking about?
Absolutely. The next step literally that I've been working on for the last week is shipping, right? How do I start to expand this product across and larger than 50 miles where I'm making it?
Right. And make sure that it stays frozen.
Going to be stable. Yeah. Exactly. So I'm doing a lot of research right now, reaching out to relationships, but eventually once that established, it's also having conversations with the retail market, right? Being able to get this into stores so people can get it better. But figuring out shipping a frozen food product is very difficult. I'm sure. It's costly. I'm sure. And finding out the best path for mine is going to take some hard thinking, which I'm after right now, but I'm pretty confident something should be out there in the next 30 days.
That's exciting.
Yeah, because people from New York, Philadelphia,
they want
DC, everybody's hearing about it and wants
That's
it.
awesome.
Yeah.
Well, with that in mind, then we're going to I think we should time out the release of this episode for you guys when you're actually listening to it. Hopefully it'll be right around the time that's possible, and I can totally make that happen with the release schedule, because that would be such a great way for us to kind of be like, hey, now this like shipping is an opportunity.
Yeah,
and also maybe not to keep you in the kitchen at all hours of the night so that you can have a life too. But I really appreciate that. And, you know, super excited to be able to have kind of met you like right at this opportune time of like when you're still hitting the ground running and it's new and everything. And I love being able to support local brands. I told you, as somebody who has a big audience, but coincidentally, maybe not coincidentally, but by just nature of the work that I do, it's hyper local. And I don't always get the chance to work with a hyper local brand that has like a lot of engagement. Like I couldn't believe like how many people DM'd me, but it's a testament to the fact that there isn't anything like this.
No. So
I think that's something you should totally like rest in, because that's why people were so intrigued and wanted to get their hands on it. And I think people like supporting local too.
Absolutely.
Like as soon as I said like it was for anybody in Monmouth, Ocean County area, I know for sure some of the people who DM'd me specifically, that kind of made them like perk their ears up even more. So I think that's fantastic.
Yeah.
So to kind of close all this off, we're going to do a quick little lightning round, fun questions, like rapid fire sort of stuff. And then we will let you go. Okay.
I'm ready to go.
So let's keep it food focused. If you could only eat one food, and you can't say ice cream.
Yeah.
If you only eat one food for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Jamaican beef patties.
Oh, wow. You had no hesitation. Why?
No hesitation.
What is it about those?
There's something about the flaky crust.
Okay.
And then like the warm
That was the fastest answer I've ever gotten.
Yeah.
Good.
I've always had this on the back of my mind. Yeah.
You were ready for
what
that
would be my
one.
last meal? Jamaican beef.
Okay.
patties.
So it's the flakiness.
The flakiness, the inside of the beef. There's a spiciness to it because I like that too.
Cool.
And it's just delicious.
All right. Good to know. Least favorite food. Let's go opposite.
Oh, wow. You know, yams.
Also really random, but okay.
Yeah, yams. I'm just not a yam
Not
guy.
a fan. Texture.
No,
what
texture,
is it?
The stringiness.
Yeah.
And like,
I'm not. I don't love like the stringy aspect. I'll give you that one. If you were only going to do one exercise, and I mean like a lift or something, like one movement pattern for the rest of your life, what are you choosing?
Ooh, probably squats.
Okay.
There's something about working out your lower body that
powerful.
It just makes you feel great.
Yeah, it still like hits everything really. Yeah, I agree with that one. If you were gonna recommend, especially from the entrepreneurial lens, book, podcast, something for somebody to listen to out there, what are you listening to, reading? What is it?
The podcast would be How I Built This by
Best
Guy
podcast,
Raz.
yeah.
Literally listening to his sessions, I think keeps me sane.
Yeah,
because
especially some of the food ones.
Yeah.
Like every time, even since we've been speaking now, I know the first time we met, I dropped like 2 different episodes to you that you should listen to.
Yeah.
As you were talking now, I thought of like 3 more that I'm sure you've heard, but like the story of the woman who started Simple Mills. I'm thinking about you like venturing into Whole Foods like she did and just being like, hey, can you try this? Like that should be your next move at the Whole Foods and Wall.
It actually makes me feel like I'm surrounded by people going through the same thing.
Sure.
And
totally.
It keeps me going.
Yeah. Such a great book too. I don't know if you've only listened. Yeah, the book was really great. Just like the way he organized a lot of the types of entrepreneurial journeys that were similar. It was a very interesting way to read it and those be tied together because he grouped like specific problem sets, like issues with co-founders, challenges with like bringing things to market, foods, all that sort of stuff. I love that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Now, as the very last question, before I ask you, you got to plug yourself, tell us where we can find you, stay connected, everything. But if somebody's listened to this so far and they could really only take away one message, what do you want that to be for them?
I think it would be that if you have an idea out there that you're really passionate about, go for it, because you're going to go on living life eventually wondering, why didn't I go for it? And there's going to be a lot of bumps in the road, and, you know, relationships are going to be hard to be had. But when you get to that place of doing something for yourself, it's unlike anything else. And I would tell any like aspiring entrepreneur or a young founder to just keep at it. And if one thing doesn't work, keep a mind for the next thing, because the knowledge and experience that you just gained is going to transition into everything that you do. And just keep an open mind and sink yourself in.
Amazing. Well, on that note, my wish for you is someday for us to be sitting here remembering this podcast and this specific interview while you're on How I Built This, talking
Same
about
here.
Orka Bars, right? And I'll be like, I knew that guy when he first got started. So super cool. And again, thank you so much for being here, sharing about your story, your perspectives, all of it super refreshing. And truly, I'm just excited to see where you go and all the things that you do. So for everybody listening, how can they stay connected with you? More importantly, how can they place their order for some Orka Bars? Because we know that's going to happen after listening to this episode.
Yeah. So we are taking orders, and it's orkabar.com, ORKABAR.com. And you can also follow us on anywhere social media, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, at Orka Bar.
Perfect. We will link all of it down in the show notes. So it's super easy. You guys can just go right there and click and make sure you follow them too, so you can stay along on that journey. And for everybody who tuned in today, you guys know the deal. I say it every single week. Take 3 seconds to leave us a review, because that does help the show, and it helps other people who maybe listen to similar podcasts get recommended episodes like this one, which is also another way for us to just spread more on the word of Orka Bar, entrepreneurship, mindset, playing it safe versus taking risks, all of the different things that we covered today. And you were so amazing in sharing, Stephen. So thank you.
Thank you.
Go scroll all the way to the bottom if you're on Apple Podcasts. I have to say this because people always ask me, I don't know how to leave a review. Otherwise I would. It's not that obvious. So maybe Apple Podcasts needs to work on this, but go all the way to the bottom of the episode. You'll see the blank stars. Obviously you're going to hit a 5, and that's literally all you need to do. Spotify, it's even easier. It's actually right at the top. So it's maybe a little bit more of a user-friendly design, but we would appreciate if you guys would do that, along with sharing this with somebody who you think might be interested. If it's somebody that loves ice cream, it would be a no-brainer to send them this episode so that they listen to it and can get their hands on some too. But with that, we thank you guys for tuning in once again to another episode of the FYX podcast. And from wherever you're listening from, we hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thanks for
Stephen.
having me.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it.